Hi there. Today we'll look at the journey from vision to realization. What's this journey about? You might ask me. It's simple. Anything that is to be created, a product or a great service. For example, like the laptop or the tablet or the phone that you're watching this video on, to the social platforms that we use, say Facebook or Instagram, or even the buildings that you inhabit, the wonderful, the arts, everything starts with a vision. We come up with this idea, we come up with this requirement, we come up with this problem that has to be solved, and we think, okay, this is how I'm going to proceed and solve it. I come up with these statements, you know what, I wish I had something like this. And that's where the magic starts. From that I wish or I would like statement to, oh, here is it, your vision or your wish that has been given to you as a physical product or as a service, as a monument, as anything, but it has been brought to life. So this is a journey that we'll now take a look at. So how does a vision actually come to life? It begins when somebody thinks of a concept or a product or a service that they want to have implemented. Think of it in terms of your customer. Suppose there was a customer who wanted to create the perfect social networking site. So he would have some thoughts on how it should be. Oh, you know what? It should have a facility for people to interact freely on their subject areas. Great. It should have the ability for people to connect, reach out, personally message, and just know each other very well. Great. It should have a facility for people to create their core circles, create their own tribes there on the platform. Wow, great. So what you have just heard is essentially somebody laying out a vision for a product or service that they think would be very useful. We begin by understanding, okay, what is that to be accomplished at the end of it? So there are some really primary stakeholders of a project. The visionary who begins this project, the top stakeholder or the sponsor who's going to actually fund this, the senior most head of the department or the CEO who actually is going to personally overlook this because it's going to be a game changer for them. They're all probably part of your top stakeholders group whose vision will have to be honored and taken down all the way to realize a finished product or service. Once you have a vision, you really can't begin work unless you have a clear idea of what does that vision comprise of. For example, taking the same networking tool, okay, there had to be meeting places. There had to be a way for people to communicate with each other. How can I drill these down into sort of requirements and objectives? So let's say like creation of a co-working kind of a place on the same product would be a requirement. Creation of groups or allowing people to add their contacts, their friends, and create personalized circles would be a requirement. And what would be essentially the objectives is like checking off this set of requirements with a particular measurable criteria, which will then make sure that your objectives are being met or not. In terms of functional, it could be like what are the functions that the system or application needs to achieve. And when I talk in terms of say non-functional requirements, that's where the software aspects come into the picture. Something like your security, something like your performance. You shouldn't be allowing anybody else to like sort of play around with your circle of friends. You should be restricting access only to yourself or the people whom you authorize. The speed of the application performing should be pretty good. We don't want people to just click a button and then, okay, okay, I'm waiting, that kind of a thing. So those are essentially part of your non-functional requirements. Remember one thing, the more specific you are on your objectives or the measurable criteria that is to be used, the clearer your requirements and how you can go ahead and accomplish that will be. So really important to set measurable criteria. So now you have the requirements. Every requirement, if you want to fulfill, you're going to think in terms of three things. You want to think in terms of the process, means what would be the process behind this. You got to think in terms of the technology, which technology in the market today would help me accomplish this. And you got to think in terms of the people. By people here, we'll be referring to skill sets. How many testers would I need? How many developers would I need? What kind of an expert area that person is going to have? So the combination of these three, the process, the people, and the technology, essentially makes possible that you bring any requirement to life. Let's have a simple example. An organization that wants to go online and sell its products. Right now, they have a couple of brick and mortar stores. They would like to start selling online. For this to be established, what is going to be important? I need to have a website for them to begin with. I need to be dealing with an inventory management system. I need to be dealing with a product management system for all those ads, the product listing, the photos, the details. I need to have a content management system. I need to have a network. I need to have a basis, and I need to have people who can code and other things. So here, your processes would be okay. What will happen if somebody buys a particular product? How does that product order go to your inventory management system, and how is it going to fulfill that order? How is it going to sort of interact with the logistics part, which is going to then send out these particular packages to the customers? And first of all, how are these customers going to be stored in the first place? How is the payment process going to work? So these are all part of the process things. And in terms of technology, what is the best thing that I can use for building my website? What is a supply chain management software that I can use? What is an inventory management software that I can employ here? And what kind of resources do I need? I need a front end, maybe a React JS developer who's going to come up with a great front end. I need to have a supply chain expert who's going to be sort of overseeing all these nodal points. I need a tester who really understands how an online retail works and who's going to sort of incorporate those into the testing criteria. So I've understood the work that is to be done by each of these individuals. So that's how my work is essentially broken down. In this context, what is useful is to understand the RACI framework. R stands for responsible, A stands for accountable, C is consult, and I is inform. So these are all roles played by the individual. For example, the Prime Minister of my country would be responsible for the everyday running of the country. When he assigns some work to his cabinet ministers for maybe a particular initiative, he is accountable for that initiative to be done. But the individual cabinet minister who's assigned that role, he is responsible for carrying it out. The, the consult here would be to get in subject matter experts to offer their opinion on the best way it could be done. It could be an economic advisor, it could be anybody else in the senior management or an ex-prime minister, or anybody who could actually throw some light and help these guys forward. And inform is essentially the other stakeholders who need to be kept informed of how the progress is going. So now we have broken down the work into its constituents. we essentially carry out an exhaustive planning exercise. Planning is really important. Unless you know your plan of how you're going to be accomplishing all those requirements and objectives, how everybody is going to work on their tasks, when is somebody going to finish their task and when is the other person going to start it, unless this information is available and followed, it will be tough to track project progress. When you come up with a plan, there will always be dependencies. For example, unless the products are stored in the warehouse, the logistics guys' work does not kick in. Unless the website is made, the payment integration cannot be done. So these are all essentially dependencies. So like this, if a simple project like this can have so many dependencies, just think of complex programs. Even the control of the coronavirus, it's actually a huge program that is running across multiple countries. One aspect of that dealing with stopping further flow, one dealing with the people, one dealing with hospitals and setting up centers, one dealing with the economic activities. So there are multiple programs running. Inside each program, there are multiple projects. People have a lot of work to do and they have a lot of dependency. And hospital cannot be started to build unless the raw materials arrive. The raw materials cannot come in until they have been manufactured with the factory and dispatched safely. Once the hospital is built, then the beds, everything is set up. The recruitment of doctors and nurses for that particular unit has to be done. So now you get the drift of how complex projects will be. But it all becomes very simple when you have a plan in hand. You know what is going to be done, who's going to do it, by when are they going to do it, and what are the dependencies. You also define your risks in the project. These are all essentially what if kind of scenarios. Okay, what if this doesn't happen? What if that doesn't happen? What if the manufacturer does not supply enough beds? What will you do? That's a risk. Yeah, we'll be able to only service fewer patients. So for every risk, you essentially have a risk management plan. You put in the risk there, you assess the impact, and you find out, okay, what is the probability of this occurring? We'll cover risk anyway in a different video. But for now, yes, understand that you need to have your risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies clearly laid out so that your plan can actually work. Then the actual execution starts. People just do their work. They carry on the tasks that have been defined in the plan. Every deadline is monitored. So, as a project manager or program manager, one of the most important things that you need to take care of is the plan. So, are people working to the plan? Are there any challenges coming up? Are the activities on the critical path, essentially the shortest path, being done properly? Are any of those risks materializing? Should you be stepping in to take care? So, this continuous monitoring is essentially really important. And along with the development, also starts the vital aspect of testing. Remember the objectives that we arrived at earlier along with the requirements? Are they being fulfilled completely? So this is where the testers will actually play a role. So you have functional testers, you have performance testers, you have UI testers, you have testers across all the gamuts of a particular product or a service. So they come up with their use case scenarios as if the user is doing it, perform the testing and give their testing feedback to the development team so that they can incorporate any changes that may be required. So continuous monitoring and course correction ensures that the project stays on track. So as part of monitoring and course correction, the other thing that you'll be doing is to keep communicating regularly. All stakeholders need to know how the project is going on. Some may need information at a lower level of detail, and some may need at the higher level of detail. So, based on the stakeholder whom you're communicating with, you would alter your communication accordingly. So, these 6 steps ensure that your product is well on its way to be built and satisfies the objectives or the requirements that have been laid out for the project. So this essentially is a vision coming true.